the novel. And I think it's interesting because um, I'm pretty sure that cousin Lyman is going to leave Miss Amelia and break her heart. And it seems from the beginning of the novel that when she's locked inside her house, she seems to shrivel up and hide away, sort of like the seed of the peach or the pit. Sorry. Um, and so I think that the pit could represent her heart, and I think that's interesting. And the other one, I'm going to connect it to another passage later in the book, but I'm not going to read that passage. It immediately, when the author talks about how the heart of such a child or anyone really may fester and swell until it is a misery to carry within the body, until it's a misery to carry within the body, I immediately connected that passage to the part where we learned that Miss Amelia had her kidney stones out. Um, and it's really interesting to me because that's kind of what kidney stones are. They swell, they like grow, I guess, until they're really painful, and then Miss Amelia had to have hers removed. um, but what's interesting is that we hear that she actually turns her kidney stones into like ornaments and in like a chain, and she gives them to cousin Lyman. So my question is, what might the kidney stones represent, and why did Miss Amelia give them to cousin Lyman?
Cool question, and interesting too.
Okay, well, I definitely remember reading this passage because it was so strange. Um, I think that they just might represent a very painful personal part of herself because it's quite clear from the beginning that Miss Amelia isn't at all open with herself. But kidney stones are incredibly painful, I've heard. And it's sort of a place of weakness, I think. So I think that by her giving her kidney stones to cousin Lyman, it's sort of her giving a vulnerable piece of herself to him.
I also agree with Kalia, and I think like the peach pit, uh, I think that's a good analogy to represent uh, the heart of Miss Amelia, because normally she is pretty closed off to people. Like when she was with Marvin, she kind of like didn't even let him get close to her. So she kind of sets up like a protective barrier around her. And the only person she's really opened up to is cousin Lyman. So, and I think that just giving like the kidney stones is kind of like, I guess, another way to represent how she's opened up to him and like shown vulnerability.
I also think that's like her love language for Lyman because like she's not a touchy person as we know from like Macy as well. And I think that just shows that she is opening up to him and is getting vulnerable with him. She's like sharing those parts of her life with him. So I think if anything has to like if Lyman takes advantage of her or anything, it's gonna crush her in the end because like she's never actually opened up that much to anyone. So
I also thought it was really notable how she and Marvin Macy's relationship to her were paralleled, because in both situations, the lover in the relationship started giving gifts to the other one. And it seems almost that they weren't fully appreciated or acknowledged. The beloved was just sort of oblivious, but to the lover, those gifts meant a lot.
Yeah, I don't think she's a person who likes to show her emotions. She's very closed off. So I think this is kind of her way of showing affection to cousin Lyman by kind of sharing a time where she was vulnerable.
I agree. Also, I remember one part where it said that the kidney stones, she would have been like upset if those tiny stones had like amounted to anything. So she kind of had to use them as a way to not let them be like shown as her weakness. And I think giving them to cousin Lyman kind of let her like have that power over them, I guess. I don't know, to kind of hide her weakness. She uses them.
Yeah, I feel like the similarity between her love for cousin Lemon and then or Lyman and then Henry Macy or Marvin Macy's love for her are really similar. and that as like the lover loves the beloved more and more, it becomes like more painful for both parties, and it like is similar to what colors like beloved passage and about that, and how she talks about like how the lover will start to create like a world of their own, and like how it just like it gets increasingly painful for both parties. I feel like it draws similarity to the passage from the book.
Yeah, that's important. That lover beloved passage will direct our reading, shape our reading, throughout the novella. All right, who's next? In the interest of time.
I can go next.
Okay.
My quote is pretty short, but for me, it sort of carries Carson McCullers' ideas that humans are very quick to assume the worst in somebody and the worst in a situation, and then to catch on. And you can say something so much that you start to believe it, even though deep inside you know it isn't true. So my quote is very simply, I know what Miss Amelia had done. She murdered that man for something in that suitcase. Now, this was said by Merle Ryan. And of course, this quote was said with a lot of conviction and certainty. That was, I know what she did. And Merle Ryan in this book is sort of defined by his profession, his health, and the fact that he isn't so well educated, which makes the reader assume that he's quite average and sort of symbolizes the general public. And the public were very, very quick to pick this rumor up and just go running with it. It describes how the rumor spread like wildfire all around town. And it got to a point where people were swarming outside of Miss Amelia's home, and they didn't really know what they were doing there, because like, what are they going to do? Find a body right on her porch? No. So they were sitting there just waiting for something to happen. And another aspect of this that is just very surprising and jarring is how quickly people believed it to be true. Like Merle Ryan, who obviously, I mean, I don't think that their word should be taken as like gospel, because they're a very average person, just said this, and everybody started to believe it, to a point where people were wondering, would the courts get involved? So my question to all of you is, do you believe that this reflects Carson McCullers' true beliefs on human nature, that they can take a rumor and just speed with it?
One thing I find kind of interesting in this, it's not quite answering your question, but I really noticed how there's kind of an us versus them thing happening. And I think the townspeople are really easily to gang up against Miss Amelia because she is different, because she is like big and not social, and just she doesn't really connect with them. They find it really easily to kind of think of something that she might have done that's wrong when they really have no proof or like really reason to believe that.
Going back to what you said about human nature, I think humans want to hear the most entertaining version of a story. So if they hear something about a murder mystery, I think just because of who they are, they're going to want to believe it, and they don't necessarily want to question it.
Yeah, I feel like that can also explain like the town's interest in Cousin Lyman, and how like the cafe's popularity and growth can almost like be like the almost like sole cause of it. It's just because Cousin Lyman has like these stories, and he's just so interesting, and like he stirs up trouble, creates fights, and he does all these things, and it kind of goes back like they just want like interest, they want excitement, and so that's what happens with like the rumor, and like this group of men who haven't seen anything, they have zero proof, are ready to like attack her like on site, just because for like from random rumor, because it just spread everywhere, and it kind of And then even that same night, cousin Lyman comes down, and then they all of a sudden they all sit down, and they like the entire town is listening, and like they all know. And there's a passage later where it talks about how they all know he's lying, like they all know it, but they're still interested, and like they're also scared because like they know Amelia will do something if they call him out. So it like points out like human nature, and it's
I
like
definitely think that's interesting. Like ruining somebody's reputation for the sole purpose of entertainment and possibly like endangering their life because it's an accusation of murder for the sole purpose of drama.